remember the quantum time machine used in Avengers Endgame? For some reason, this device, which Marvel introduced exclusively for Endgame, was never seen again in later films. Moreover, the machine didn't necessarily require someone to physically enter it to function. Thanks to the suits and time-space GPS devices, they could travel from one point in time to another without being inside the machine. So, why wasn't such a functional machine used in the later movies and series? In fact, when you think about the events the characters went through, using this time machine could have solved most of the problems before they even started. For example, Iron Man and Black Widow died, yet Gamora from the past managed to come to the future and survive. In the same way, couldn't Stark and Natasha have been brought from the past into the future? Or Captain America, who returned as an old man at the end of the film, while Peggy Carter had already died years ago? Couldn't they have passed Cap through time at the end, just like they did earlier in the movie to make him young again? At first glance, it seems like there's no explanation for these issues, but unfortunately, there is. If you're curious about what happened to the time machine we saw in the film and why it wasn't used to bring back or rejuvenate dead characters, then this video is for you. While I share with you the latest details on the topic, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video so you don't miss any of the upcoming content.
All right, we all have our assignments. 2 stones uptown, 1 stone down.
First, let me clarify something. The time machine used in Avengers Endgame was not destroyed. It is still safely stored at Avengers headquarters. This means that they could use it again in Avengers Doomsday or Avengers Secret Wars. After all, a team that once changed its future by pulling off a time heist could always do another one to bring back key characters from the past into a future war. Iron Man is a prime example, because in Avengers Doomsday, Robert Downey Jr. will reportedly play not only Doctor Doom but also return as Iron Man. Likewise, characters like Captain America will also come back, so using the time machine and going into the quantum realm is always a possibility. Now let's get to the real question. Why didn't they bring back the characters who died or grew old in Endgame? First, I want you to think about this. If you were a variant of Tony Stark living in the past, would you abandon your own reality to travel into a future where you had already died? It would be absurd, right? Especially since the people in your own timeline still need you. Someone like Stark would never leave Pepper behind either. The time machine in Endgame wasn't used to travel across alternate realities. It was only used to move back and forth within their own timeline, and every change they made in the past created a new alternate universe. But in the end, neither Tony Stark nor Natasha could be pulled from the past and integrated into the future. Yes, Gamora did come to the future from the past, but she wasn't alone. Thanos and his entire army came with her. Since Gamora had nothing binding her to her past anymore, she stayed and started a new life in the future where Thanos was killed twice. The same thing could never be accepted by the past versions of Tony Stark or Natasha. The only way they would agree to it is if there was an impossible mission in the future, something like Secret Wars, where surviving would require them. But in that case, it would need to be a scenario where Tony Stark is absolutely essential. Instead of using the time machine, it would make much more sense to use the multiverse technology of the TVA. For example, they could bring in a Tony Stark who had lost everything from another universe into the MCU. This way, rather than pulling someone from their original reality, they could follow the same strategy as Deadpool and Wolverine. Just as Wolverine's broken version was integrated into the X-Men universe, the same could be done with Iron Man. They could find an Iron Man variant who is more battle-ready and suited for the MCU. But in conclusion, bringing Iron Man or Natasha from the past into the future would never have been appropriate. Now let's get to the time reversal trick. Remember in the film how Scott Lang turned into a child, an old man, and even a baby? This showed that the team could age or de-age someone within specific points in time. Likewise, the reason Kang variants could live for thousands of years yet remain young was thanks to quantum technology. So theoretically, they could have rejuvenated Iron Man's dead body and turned him back into one of his living versions. However, this would have had not only ethical consequences, but also unpredictable outcomes. Bringing someone back from the dead through time manipulation wouldn't necessarily solve everything. Tony Stark was alive for about a minute after he snapped his fingers. During that time, he was already wearing his suit, and if the machine hadn't been destroyed by Thanos, maybe they could have de-aged him and prevented his death. But since Thanos destroyed both quantum machines, there was no way to fix Iron Man at the end of that battle. Another possibility would actually have been Doctor Strange using the Time Stone. Because thanks to the Time Stone, Strange managed to save Wong in the past. And after saving Wong, He is now serving as the Sorcerer Supreme in the present. If Wong could be saved thanks to the Time Stone, then Tony Stark could have also been saved. And if nothing happened to Wong, then nothing would have happened to Tony Stark either. So, they didn't necessarily need to use the quantum machine for this. Another point I need to mention is the issue of Captain America's rejuvenation. We know that Captain America did not want to live any longer. Since he had already spent the rest of his life with the woman he loved, he wouldn't have wanted to become young again and create a new life for himself. But here's the thing. If old Captain America is still alive, which I believe he is, since it was never mentioned anywhere that he died, then during the Doomsday events, he could use quantum technology to rejuvenate himself. But in the end, after Avengers Endgame, a factor like the TVA came into play. With TVA's technology available, no one would really go looking for Endgame's time machine anymore, because the time machine developed in Endgame actually laid the foundation for the technology developed in the TVA. So why would anyone want to use outdated technology when everyone would prefer the latest one? Still, the time machine created in Endgame was an extremely dangerous piece of technology. If it were to fall into the hands of any enemy, that enemy could create their own reality. Because if they went back to a certain point in time and changed the past, they would create a new universe that moved forward according to their own plan. The reason the Avengers didn't use this technology again after Endgame was actually explained by the Russo brothers. While carrying out the time heist, they accidentally brought Thanos and his army from the past into their world. This served as a lesson for them. If you mess with time, you face the consequences. In fact, Avengers Endgame was originally going to show us the cost of tampering with time much more clearly. The heroes would have traveled to the future, seen the fate that awaited them, and witnessed themselves being killed by the past Thanos. This final scene would have happened if Hulk had failed. If Hulk hadn't been able to withstand the power of the stones and snap his fingers, Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America would have died. Because in the final battle, it was only thanks to those who returned that everyone survived. Many of these scenes were filmed but cut from the movie. Endgame is already a long film, but it could have been much longer. Still, the film explained how the time system works in the Marvel Universe in a very simple way. Unlike in the Back to the Future films where changing the past directly affects the existing future, Marvel clarified right from the start that this wasn't the case. If the concept of time in Marvel had been handled like Back to the Future, we would be watching far more complicated films, and the multiverse wouldn't even exist. Because in Marvel, since changing the past doesn't affect the existing reality, truly dead characters cannot return. Only unrelated characters from other universes can appear, which makes it seem like the concept of death has no meaning at all. But in fact, Avengers Doomsday is coming precisely to break this perception, my friends. It will show us that dead characters truly die and do not come back. Not even the TVA's technology will work in that regard. If the TVA had any equipment capable of bringing someone back from death, they wouldn't have left the X-Men universe to perish. They would have saved its anchor being instead. But since such power or technology doesn't exist, what they actually want to show us is that death really means death. Even though in another film a Wolverine from another universe appeared, making it seem again like death has no meaning in Marvel, thankfully this won't be the case in Doomsday. Because there will no longer be such a thing as alternate universes. The idea that when someone dies, they are truly gone and cannot return will be reinforced once again through the same scenario explained in Endgame, though this time explored more deeply. So yes, that's really the whole point. Alright friends, I hope you enjoyed the content I've prepared. If there are other videos you'd like to see, don't forget to leave a comment. That's all from me for now. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.